Good afternoon and welcome to the sixth meeting of the House State Government Committee meeting of the 2022 regular session. Madam Secretary, please call the roll.
Representative Decker.
Here.
Representative Duplessis.
Here.
Representative Flood.
Here, in the annex office.
Thank you. Representative Graham.
Here.
Representative Heath.
Here in person.
Representative Hevron. Representative Johnson.
Here in the room.
Representative Maddox.
Present.
Representative Mentor. Representative Nemes.
Present in the room.
Representative Smith. Representative Stevenson. Representative Tate.
Present in the room.
Representative Tipton.
Present in the room.
Representative Upchurch. Representative Wheatley. Representative Bowling.
Present in the room.
Representative Bratcher.
Present in the room.
Representative Miller.
Here in the room. Here in the room. So we are duly constituted. Members, stand at ease. We've got some members missing, but we can at least start the testimony on the bill. I and Representative Pratt have asked that our bills not be heard in committee today, so we are here to hear one bill, and that is House Bill 28. Before we go into that, I'd like to remind everybody to use the sign-up sheets if you wish to testify on the bill. Please, no signs are in the room. Silence your cell phones if you're in the room. Members, please remember to turn on your mics. If you're those on teleconference, mute and unmute as appropriate. Please don't forget that. Matter before us today is House Bill 28, sponsored by Representative Maddox. Welcome, and I believe you have a sub on the bill.
Yes, Mr. Chairman.
Would you like to have that called?
Absolutely.
Motion on the sub.
We have a motion on the sub.
Second.
We have a second. All in favor of the sub, please signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Aye. Opposed, like sign. Sub is before us.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman and members of the committee. Now that the sub has been adopted, I would like to describe to you the four main provisions of this bill. It's very straightforward, has been quite talked about, but let's get into it. The first section of the committee sub of House Bill 28 would disallow public entities from requiring the disclosure of immunization status with regard to COVID-19. The second section of this bill would disallow post-secondary institutions from requiring a disclosure of immunization status with regard to COVID-19. The third section would prohibit vaccine passports and protect privacy rights. And the last, final, and fourth section would allow parents to opt out of a COVID vaccine for their child on the basis of conscientious objection within K through 12 schools.
Motion on the bill.
We have a motion and a second on the bill. For those viewing, could you define the vaccination passport you referred to, please?
I will read straight from the bill, if that's all right, Mr. Chairman.
Please.
I'm gonna find the right spot here. A public entity shall not mandate a vaccine passport, vaccine pass, or issue other standardized documentation to certify an individual's immunization status to a third party for a purpose other than healthcare, or otherwise publish or share any individual's immunization status or similar health information for a purpose other than healthcare.
I am told we have a committee amendment, so I'm going to ask those who, Representative Heath, if you would withdraw your motion.
I'll withdraw my motion.
Thank you. So at this time, I will ask Representative Heverin if she would like to speak.
Thank you. I apologize for being late. I was at Transportation Committee, which is still going on, but I wanted to make sure to get over here. I would like to make a motion for a committee amendment to be heard.
Is there a second? We have a second. And I believe it is in the folders.
It is. It has been distributed by staff.
So if you would look in the folders, it's Amendment HCA for House Committee Amendment. Continue.
Can I explain? Thank you very much, Chairman. What this does is currently in the language of the bill, it just has post-secondary education, and so we've just to stay consistent with the language, I wanted to remove private institutions. So it just includes what this amendment does. It includes public in several different places. So this would only be required by public post-secondary institutions. And I want to thank the sponsor of the bill for considering this a friendly committee amendment and for the chairman.
Is there any discussion on the amendment? Seeing none, I'd like a voice vote. All of those in favor of the House Committee amendment signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Oppose, like sign. That is before us. And stand at ease. All right, so we have this matter before us with the committee sub, which at the end will roll into the committee sub. So,
Motion on the bill as amended?
we have a motion on the bill as
Second.
amended. We have a second by Representative Tate. So, matter is before us. Are there any questions? We have several speakers, first of which is Chuck Eddy. We're going to allow speakers 3 minutes, and so be succinct. And as each speaker goes through, please don't restate anything a previous speaker has said. So if you would introduce yourself, sir.
Yes, sir. My name is Chuck Eddy, and I need to pull my notes up so that I don't say more than 3 minutes worth.
If you could just tell us your city you represent.
Yes,
you're from.
I'm from Lexington, Kentucky, sir.
Very good. Thank you.
I'm a supporter of good public health and the right of businesses to set rules to protect their employees, customers, and visitors. I want to thank you for the opportunity to speak, Chairman Miller and the committee members. I'm completely opposed to HB 28. We've already lost almost 1 million Americans to this deadly public health emergency. We're still losing 1,800 Americans each and every day. In the past week, right here in Kentucky, we lost 40 each and every day. Now, our country is frankly based on, and we fought for, the right that businesses can set their own rules to protect their employees and customers. We should not take that away. This includes health rules. Here in Kentucky, we certainly support local control. This bill would allow healthcare workers to refuse immunizations and not tell hospitals and medical offices. This would endanger patients and coworkers. That's flat wrong. Now, before Copernicus and Galileo, in the Middle Ages, Europeans held, quote, conscientiously held beliefs, unquote, that the sun revolved around the earth, but it didn't. Conscientiously held beliefs are not science. I want to ask you to vote no on this bill. Thank you very much.
Thank you, sir. Next is Mr. J.D. Cheney. Please have a seat and 3 minutes. Please introduce yourself,
Yes,
sir.
sir.
Although we
Thank-
all know you mainly.
Thank you, Chairman Miller. I don't think there's any danger of repetition at this point. No surprise here for the members of this committee that we've worked for and worked with over the last several years. One thing you can count on from the Kentucky League of Cities, I hope you all view it this way, is that we are consistent when it comes to our defense of home rule and local decisions being best made at the local level. This legislation would impact city and county governments being able to make those decisions at the local level, and as such, our board has voted to oppose that. I want to also make clear that it's not, there may be some broad philosophical agreement with my membership about whether or not they would impose any types of restrictions that are prohibited. In fact, I think every mayor I've talked to would not, or any city council would not, given the fact of what we were facing, and we opposed, just for the consistency example, we had an issue with the Biden mandate that mandated to get the vaccines. We were fearful that we were going to lose a lot of our public safety employees. So it's not weighing in for us one way or another on the vaccine issue. It is to say that local officials are in the best position to make local decisions locally. And because it violates that tenet and basic principle of home rule, our board has voted to oppose the legislation. And most of you all have stuck with us solidly on this home rule issue for all of these years, and we ask that you would consider doing so on this issue as well. Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Thank you for your brevity.
Unusual, isn't it?
Mr. Jason Hall. Welcome. Please introduce yourself and tell us where you're from.
My name is Jason Hall, Catholic Conference of Kentucky. And thank you, Mr. Chairman. And I want to apologize that with the amendments flying around this morning, I've not had a chance to, did not receive all of those and have a chance to review them, but I have seen now Representative Heveron's amendment. I certainly appreciate that. Our remaining concern is in Section 1, there is a definition, which actually might be used multiple times during the course of the statute, but Section 1, which is not amended by Representative Heveron's amendment, includes religious and educational nonprofits in the definition of public entities. And we would have a serious objection to including religious nonprofits and other nonprofits in the definition of a public entity and creating separate regulatory frameworks for public and private entities in which religious nonprofits would end up on the public side of that line. And so we would object very strongly. If there would be a way to amend that, that would address that concern. But we appreciate the willingness to offer these amendments and consider them so far this morning. Thank you.
You're welcome. Thank you again for your brevity. The last speaker that has signed up, and I will give a second call because there's a lot of people in here. If Will Davis,
excuse me, Mr. Chairman, that's my mistake. Will Davis is not speaking.
My bad. Okay. Even though it's a little out of order, if there's anyone who wishes to speak for 3 minutes, I will give them that privilege because I've got a little extra time because the other two bills are not going to be heard. Okay. So at this point, we'll take questions from the committee members. Representative Johnson, please.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. This question is actually going to go, I think, to the bill sponsor. Representative, could you respond to the religious and nonprofit question that was just brought up? Just if you can help us clarify what that language is, at least what the intention was versus what it might actually be saying.
The intention was to include the nonprofits that are defined in KRS 14A.1/070. If there's an issue with that, we can look at it more closely. But again, this has been vetted over the course of the past 6 months very carefully, and this is the first time that I've heard that concern today. So I'm happy to look at it, but the intention is to create as broad protections as possible for Kentuckians to be able to decide for themselves whether or not to receive a vaccine. Thank you.
Thank you. And I would just say that we might need to look at that as we go to the floor, assuming that it passes from the committee today. I'm not 100% clear where we need to go with that, so I think it's something for a conversation for a future date. Thank you.
Just to clarify that, just take, for example, a hospital. A for-profit hospital clearly would not be covered. A public hospital, publicly owned hospital, would be covered. And the ones from a nonprofit, such as we have in Jefferson County, Norton's Children's, and the others, would those be covered?
Again, this is a concern that has just been raised today among the stakeholders that we've talked with on this bill. It's not been an issue so far, and I'm more than willing to look at the definition. But again, the intention was to provide as broad protection as possible for Kentuckians.
Okay, so you're open to suggestions. Okay, very good. Any other questions? Representative Duplessis.
I really don't. Representative Johnson asked the question I wanted to ask. When I read the bill this morning, that was my biggest. I had a couple of flags. My number one flag was, why are we singling out nonprofits? I think about crisis pregnancy centers and rape, and I mean, those. I don't know. It seems weird to be singling them out, especially if they're associated with the church. I don't know. So I would like to maybe discuss that. I'll be a yes today, but I'm going to need to talk to you maybe about changing on the floor.
Absolutely, and I appreciate those remarks, Representative Duplessis. And again, for a frame of reference, my intention with the entirety of this bill, including its original form, was to provide as broad protections as possible, statutory protections for Kentuckians to be able to decide for themselves. So throughout the legislative process, it has been evaluated, and there will continue to be discussions along those lines. But as far as I'm concerned, I would rather that everybody be able to decide for themselves. Thank you.
Thank you. Representative Smith.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Can you kind of just bring this right to a narrow scope for me on, we've heard all these different organizations that I have some respect for say that they're not interested in this legislation. Mm-hmm. Could you tell me where you're headed with this on your final conclusion on what you'd like to see come out of this piece of legislation for Kentucky? Because I guess what bothers me just a little bit about it, and I was telling the chairman earlier, my problem is we're passing legislation that'll be forever until it's amended or taken out. Somebody else takes it out. So you must have a viewpoint of some sort of protection for just individual rights, or just because we're listening from businesses, this League of Cities. These are people that come in and represent a lot of people. And similar to the question on religious organization. And I had one thing that bothered me just a little bit, Representative, was the fact that we were saying that maybe even restaurants, till you took the business side of it out, restaurants couldn't question employees coming in that's going to be handling a lot of food, a lot of different things, whether they've had protection. I know this is when I first heard the bill several months ago, the part that worried me was infringing on our private businesses and telling them what to do. That bothered me to start off with. And I've been trying to find some area that I could grasp onto what direction you're trying to go, because I know your past is not to go after individuals like private businesses and things like that you stand for some liberty. So I look at capitalism and private businesses as liberty. So if I'm mistaken there, tell me where you're wanting this legislation, what the end result that you'd like to see after you've heard different organizations come up on the issue.
Sure. Representative Smith, with the exception of the Kentucky League of Cities, which is making a home rule argument, which is a little bit different of a dimension to this discussion, the other entities who are opposed to this bill are opposed by virtue of the fact that they want to retain the ability to mandate a vaccine. And I am fundamentally and ideologically opposed to people being forced to receive a vaccine against their will. So House Bill 28 in its original iteration, and as you see it today, is designed to provide the broadest possible protections for Kentuckians to be able to decide for themselves whether or not to receive a vaccine without any undue force or coercion from any entity to the extent that is fully possible. That's my intention and that's my hope. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
You're welcome. Representative Demas.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I just want to clarify real quickly a lot of the comments and some of the questions. Savannah up here.
Oh,
yeah.
Not wearing my glasses. You'll have to forgive me.
It's hard to know where you are when somebody's on a microphone. I wanted to just clarify because a lot of the questions and some of the comments from the table had to do with businesses. The original iteration of the bill, as you said, included private entities and businesses. This does not because of pushback within the caucus and among the community. That leads me to the purpose of my comment is the language about or any nonprofit corporation as defined by KRS 14A.1-070 was consistent with the original bill. I think that's probably just in drafting the amendment that was left in probably unintentionally because that's part of the private world that I think we're taking out of this. So my suggestion is with that understanding and agreement that was made to take private out, that probably was supposed to come out as well. But that's why I think it's in there. It was just a scrivener's error and not deleting it when the rest of the private entity information came out. Is that correct, or you have any comment on that?
I think that you characterized the status of the bill well in terms of the committee sub as far as the pushback and internal discussions that took place, and as far as the definition of the nonprofits, I would tend to agree that if the design was to remove private, that was likely intended to be removed as well.
Okay, and that's something we can easily fix and just a floor amendment, taking out a few lines of the bill in various sections. Okay, that's it. Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
At this point, we have no more questions. This is the last call for questions. Representative Stevenson, sorry. Mike?
I have a question. You talked about the broadest protection for Kentuckians. So I guess my question is, if the government is responsible for protecting Kentuckians, what are they to do when we're in such a thing as a pandemic if they don't have information to make decisions on? Like, how do you protect a community from a pandemic if you're not allowed to ask the question?
Sure. Representative Stevenson, thank you for your question. And no aspect of this legislation is intended to impede a government's ability to provide good, solid information for citizens to make good decisions, because I firmly believe that Kentuckians can make good decisions for themselves and their families when it comes to their health care, when it comes to situations like public health crises, and there's no aspect of this legislation that would impede the government's ability to provide that information.
Now, would it also allow, like, for example, if this passes, would it subject the government or other entities to suits because they didn't protect the other workers?
No aspect of this legislation is intended to do anything like that. This is solely intended to make it to where these entities cannot require the disclosure of immunization status, or in the case of K through 12 schools, that they allow for parents to opt their children out.
Okay, thank you.
Very good. Seeing no other questions, Madam Secretary, please call the roll.
Representative Bowling,
Yes.
Representative Bratcher,
Yes.
Representative Decker,
Yes, with the proviso, what Jason said. Thank you.
Representative Duplessis,
I'm a yes today and looking to see what happens on the floor. Thank you.
Representative Flood,
No.
thank you. Representative Graham,
I'll explain my vote, Mr. Chairman. If I
You may.
As a former teacher and as a former elected official, when we talk about local control, the two best places that show how they can operate and serve the communities are at the local level, and I know that from my experience being in both. And if we are a person or people who espouse the ideas of limited government, then local government, be it the Board of Education or city and county governments, are the best place in which services are made and decisions are made for the good of all. And as a Commonwealth, that's what we are, for the good of all. That's what that means. And so limiting these local divisions of government from being able to make decisions which are best for the community, but not only that, best for the Commonwealth of Kentucky, I think this bill is a bad bill. And we don't know what other kind of pandemic will come in the near future, but putting this law into place inhibits not only state government, but it will inhibit, I believe, all divisions of government. And for that reason, I stand for what is right and what is for the good of all, and I vote no for this bill.
Representative Heath,
Yes.
Representative Heverin,
Yes.
Representative Johnson,
Explain my yes vote. Mr. Chairman. Thank you, sir. This has been a unique bill in the fact that it seems that seemingly we have competing conservative values at this point. One is, as J.D. Cheney's very well put, the concept of local rule, and that's something that I believe in greatly. But at the same time, we have the conservative value of individual rights. And although I'm a local rule guy, have been for a long time, I'm going to, at this point, stand with individual rights as far as my vote on this bill, and I look forward to having a conversation on the. I am a yes vote. Thank you.
Representative Maddox,
Yes.
Representative Mentor,
No.
Representative Nemus,
Just a quick comment, Mr. Chairman.
You may.
Just wanted to clarify, I don't think my friend, the gentleman from Franklin, intended to say otherwise, but I just want to be clear. Everybody knows this. He said we don't know what further pandemic there may be in the future. This bill only applies to COVID. Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I'm a yes.
Thank you.
Representative Smith, Representative Stevenson. Is that a yes?
That was
No.
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 That was a no.
Okay. Representative Tate,
Yes.
Representative Tipton,
Mr. Chairman, may I explain my vote?
You may.
While we've been discussing this, I actually looked up KRS 14A1070. There are like 45 different entities there, and I do believe a lot of those are private entities. So I would hope that I'm going to vote yes today, but I would hope that we can clarify that, deal with that on the floor. And I would like to, one other, I've heard from so many constituents on this issue, and the bottom line is I have consistently told people, get the right information. And I believe it's the role of government to get the information out to individuals. Get that information out to people, accurate information, so that individuals can consult with their doctors and make the decisions that are right for them. I vote yes.
Representative Upchurch,
I'd like to explain my vote. Voting
Please.
yes. But I've just found this whole dialogue quite interesting from where we are today, from where we were in 1919. This is an excerpt that I've been scrolling here trying to find out of a bulletin that came out of Elk Spring Valley Baptist Church, where I attend in Monticello, Kentucky. It says, this was in the announcements part. In January 1919, no preaching from September 1918 until March 1919. State Board of Health stopped public gatherings on account of flu epidemic. Many thousands die. So we have kind of come full circle with how we view edicts from state, the state health department at the time to where we are today. I vote yes.
Representative Wheatley,
Briefly explain. Representative Upchurch's reading of his church's past and has further convinced me of my no vote. And Representative, my friend from Jefferson, did reiterate that this is for the COVID virus only, but also any mutations and how dangerous that is. And as a former public servant and a fire chief, to be able to have the ability to home rule, the ability to direct the forces, basically, with those firefighters and law enforcement, who I dealt with quite a bit also, to say to them as they come to work each day, oh, we don't have the ability to really control our workforce, really have all the tools we need to make sure everybody is as safe as possible. So for those reasons, and for more questions I will have on the floor at a later time, I'm voting no.
Representative Miller.
I'm going to explain my yes vote. First off, I want to say I'm a proponent of vaccines. I've received 3 Moderna shots, but in life, we all face risks. I feel it's the least risk choice for me and my family to be vaccinated. That said, I do not want government mandating a vaccine or shaming informed and free individuals that they should. So with that, that is my yes vote. Motion carries with favorable expression. I'd like a motion to roll the amendment into the sub. Is there a motion? So moved. Is there and we have a second. All in favor of rolling the motion into the amendment into a sub, say aye. Aye. Opposed, like sign. It is rolled into the sub. There being no other business to come before us, we are adjourned.